It's 2:30, so I'm going to call our meeting to order. My name is Professor Kristen Hickman. I'm Vice Chair of the University and Faculty Senates, and I will be chairing today's meeting in the absence of President Gabel. Moving directly to our agenda. Item 2 on our agenda, after calling us to order, is for me to call upon Chris Quapic to explain our new voting system. Chris, can you take it away?
Yes, thank you very much, Vice Chair Hickman. Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Quapic, work for the University Senate office, and typically are the one who administers these meetings. As you may be aware and have seen in our dockets, which I've just linked in our chat, we are going to be piloting a new voting system for University Senate meetings. There's a couple of reasons why we're trying to do this. Number one, we want to make sure that our votes that happen when we usually have about 200 people are as accurate in real time as they can be. And just to make sure that people who are in the meeting, we oftentimes have a lot of guests. We do want to make sure that people who are voting in the right Senate. So we decided to branch outside of our Zoom polling feature to see if we can find a different platform to use to do this. So we've settled on a third-party platform. It's a web-based service called Meeting Pulse. And if you haven't already done so, please do go into the docket. I'll also link this in a second. But there is a link in order to access the Meeting Pulse system, and I've also just put that link in there. So I've actually got just a few slides, like 3 or 4 slides, to just go through to just explain what this is, how to access it, and how you should experience it. We'll actually have about 3 practice questions, just some fun trivia questions, and then I'll open up for questions from you in case anyone has issues. We just ask that you bear with us, as it is difficult to onboard about over 100 to close to 200 people to new technology all at once. So I appreciate your patience. So let me share my screen with you really quickly. All right. So as I mentioned, prior to the meeting, when our dockets are sent out to you via email, every docket will now have a specific link with the link to the Meeting Pulse website. It will also have a QR code, which you can use with your phone. By clicking on the link or scanning the code, it'll take you directly to the platform. Once you get there, you'll be asked to enter a password. Today's password is Goldie. I might just leave it as that. But then you also provide your name and email address. And I would ask that you just put your full name and your UMN account once you're in there. If you're already in, you might already notice that there's nothing there yet. That's because we haven't launched any polls. Things will move in real time. So polls will launch automatically when I send them out. And from there, you will be able to select your choice. So as I mentioned, this link is currently available in the chat if you'd like to use it on your desktop. Otherwise, I know that's we tried this out earlier in the Student Senate meeting, and some people decided to just use their phone, where you may go ahead and scan this QR code, and essentially then throughout the meeting, your phone will be your voting device. As long as you stay with that web page open, you will be able to continue to vote when the time comes. So looking over, I'm seeing that a number of you are currently logging in, getting logged into the system, which is great. So let's do just a couple practices. We're going to practice 3 questions and see if you're able to actually vote. I'll start with 1, and then we'll go for there. So you'll see this pop up on your other screen. This is the question that we're going to start with. So the poll has just been launched. You should, if you're in the system, you should be able to see it. And I do see a number of people voting, so this is very good. And a lot of people know this answer, which is kind of all over the place, so that's great. So as we typically do with these votes, I will let it go for about 20 seconds or so, give you about a 10-second warning. And then I'll end up closing the poll. So I'll give a 10-second warning if you wish to vote. And last call. So once it's closed, you will see it disappear from your screen. I will show the results to you on this. So 108 of you got the answer correct, that the university was founded in 1851. So 108 to 7-2. So you'll see there are the results right now that you can see. So I'm actually just going to I'm going to pause right there and see if there are, because we do have other questions. We can practice a few more times before we move on with the meeting, but I did want to see if there were any questions from members, and I will put the URL once again, sure, into the chat, but see if there's any questions or anyone had specific issues with that, and I'll try to get that to fixed as quickly as possible. So thank you.
I see that we do have a question from Jason Kerwin.
Okay, let me ask you to unmute, Jason.
Hi, Jason Kerwin, CFAN Senator. So one question, just sort of a statement, is that poll is not refreshing unless I hit reload in the browser. So I didn't see it until I hit reload. Well, my question is, what is the advantage of this over the existing Zoom poll technology?
So if you don't mind, I'd like to answer that question maybe offline with you, just because there's a number of different ways. But again, this is a pilot that we're trying out. But I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that you had to refresh, and I'm glad that you said that. We will try another poll and see if that pops up, and I would actually appreciate if you would give me feedback if you don't see that. So, and
perhaps while we are trying another poll, we can move forward with additional questions. The next person I see in the queue, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name, is Shir Ganor.
Hi, yes, that was perfect, actually. Shir Ganor, CLA Senator. Something that occurred to me when I responded to the poll is that once I clicked on an answer, it just automatically submitted it, and there was no way for me to revise my answer if I perhaps clicked on the wrong one, or if I wanted to rethink it. So I think that if there's an option to add that feature, I think that would be important when we're voting on university matters.
Yes, thank you for that question. You should be able to actually change your answer. That should be available. I will just double check that really quickly. I appreciate your patience. So it should be allowing you to change your answer. So why don't we run another poll, another practice poll, and see if any of these issues have been resolved. So let's go ahead with poll number 2.
I can say it seems to have let me change my answer.
Okay, that is good to know. Thank you.
If anyone else had a different experience, please let us know. I'm seeing a shaking of a hand. If you'll forgive me, I'm going to take Alicia Cohen out of order. Did you not have that happen for you?
Well, I'm clicking and it's getting bold with the other one, but it says your answer is submitted the first time. So I'm really down on this. I have the same concerns I've just heard from the last 2 people. I think we have better technology in the university than this, to be honest.
Okay.
So I see a hand from Charles Rank.
Yeah, I'm just I personally like it so far, but I was just curious is this being used to potentially track people's voting record for data on that, or is this simply just for ease of use?
Yeah, it's again, it's mostly to have a better accurate poll during the meeting, so that we can make it so that members of the actual Senate are the only ones allowed to vote on certain matters. We've had issues in the past where we've had to double check votes. It's not meant for tracking, although it can, but that's not the ultimate goal. It's just to make sure that we have correct real-time results during these meetings. So that's why we're trying these different methods. So
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, I didn't say my name. Charles Rank, Civil Service Center.
thanks, Charles.
Helena Ruff, please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Helena Roof, Faculty Center from CLA. I was just expressing some of the same concerns that other people had about submitting my answer. And yes, I was able to change the answer, but like she said, it seems now that I almost submitted the answer twice. And so I'm not sure how that looks on your end over there. And maybe it just changes the answer, but that's something I would want to test out a little bit more before we moved to using this whole scale.
I appreciate those comments. Again, part of the reason why we're testing this out. We do have the Zoom backup, so if we need to do that, we will do that. So again, appreciate your patience in us trying this out.
Just out of curiosity, Chris, since both Helena and I changed our answers, do you have two answers from us or do you only have one?
So I am not able to track individuals. This is only coming up as cumulative results. And so I do see the polling changing back and forth as people are switching their answers from either, Morrill to Northrop and things like that. So they are changing in real time. So I do see them being recorded. I don't see, but I can't tell who individually voted how. I have no idea who voted how.
Got it, which is probably a good thing.
Yep.
Nicholas Wallenhorst.
Hi, my name is Nick Wallenhorst. I'm a student senator from the College of Liberal Arts. While I understand and agree to an extent on the importance of having a proper parliamentary procedure, I do question if this is the best time and the best use of University Senate, scheduling, debating a simple form of voting procedure rather than real issues that are pertaining to students, pertaining to faculty. And I hope we can promptly wrap up this discussion and recognize that, while voting is certainly important, we should have a proper procedure for it if this is a proper use of our time as a body. Thank you.
So I see several more hands. We have run to the length of the time dedicated on the agenda for this particular item. I am wondering, Chris, given the questions and issues, whether you feel that this is the approach that we should continue to use for this meeting and inviting feedback from, or rather we should go to the old Zoom polls for purposes of this meeting and ask people who had comments and questions, perhaps to email them in. What do you think?
I think that's just a fine idea. As I said, we're trying to, we've tested this out in small batches. We can only get so far with small batches. Kind of wanted to see how you all would receive this, and that is totally fine. So I'm prepared to move forward with our Zoom polls as normal, and we can proceed in our normal function if you'd like.
Okay, let me just see. I appreciate everybody lowering their hands. I also appreciate everyone's patience, and input with respect to this. So I think we will go forward with our agenda. We will use the old Zoom polls for this meeting, but we appreciate the feedback. If you have additional feedback to offer, please email Chris and let him know, and we will go forward from here. Okay, so item 3 on our agenda is a motion to approve a special rule limiting each speaker to 2 minutes each time they are recognized to speak. A 2/3 majority of those present and voting is required to approve this special rule. No motion or second is needed. Chris, I'm going to need you to initiate, or I should ask first, is there any discussion? Seeing none, Chris, how are we going to initiate this poll now that we're going back to the old polling system?
We're just automatically, we're prepared. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Please initiate the poll.
Give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 149 ayes, 3 nays, and 5 abstentions, that motion does prevail.
Thank you. Moving forward to item 4. Item 4 concerns administrative responses to University Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 5 is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been forwarded for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. Helen Carlson, Gary Hatchfield, Irene Hess, Patsy McGlynn, Atlaw Mikhail, Gail Rosenbaum, Roger Stewart, Arthur Weidenhoft, Maria Bune, and Christopher Seitz. Moving forward to item 6. Item 6 is approval of the minutes from the University Senate meeting on September 29th of this year. No motion or second is needed. Chris, could you please initiate the poll?
We'll give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 142 ayes, 0 nays, and 11 abstentions, that motion prevails.
Thank you. Item 7 is the Senate Consultative Committee report. I'd like to call on Professor Flaherty Manchester to give this report, please.
Thank you. So on behalf of the Senate Consultative Committee, I have a recent legislative action to report. On October 28th, the SCC sent a letter to Chair Powell and other members of the Board of Regents regarding the comments made by then Chair Vice Sviggum at the October Board of Regents meeting. The decision to write a letter from SCC stemmed from an engaged discussion we had at our October meeting. And at this meeting, there was kind of agreement that of the letters that were already circulated, which we thought were very important, we also wanted to write a letter that would focus on some action taking by the board. We identified the Board of Regents' own code of conduct policy for members as our focus. And this was something we saw that had not been in the public discourse much extensively regarding Regent Sviggum's remarks. So at the meeting, the SCC voted affirmatively to take action, which was to write a letter to the board, and the SCC members provided timely comments on a draft spearheaded by Vice Chair Mark B. in the days after our SCC meeting. In that letter, we call on the board to examine the recent remarks made by Regent Sviggum with respect to its own code of conduct, with the purpose of determining whether a violation had occurred, and if so, what actions it might take under the section 11 of its own document, entitled Violations and Breaches of the Code of Conduct. In our initial draft, we were proposing and suggesting possible sanction of removal of the vice chair office. However, in the recent the events that followed, Vice Chair Sviggum did step down from that position. However, we continued with our letter and focused on the examination of the remarks with respect to the code of conduct, pointing out possible violations in terms of the guiding principles of that code of conduct, as well as the duty of care clauses. And we're calling on the board members to engage in their own examination of those remarks. And we conclude the letter by highlighting how this is an important moment for reflection and open discourse on the importance of the code of conduct by the standard for which regents fulfill their roles as members of the governing body of the university. And the full text of that letter can be found on the new legislative action tracker on the University's Senate website. In addition, in terms of other updates I want to share, we recently heard as a committee from Tina Marisam and Donna Johnson on the required professional development modules for faculty, instructors, and instructional staff. That's around accessible course design and related to disability accommodations. If you are interested in engaging in more involvement on your own in terms of participation in that process for developing these materials, please reach out, because I know they are interested in additional participants to develop and test their content. And then finally, as SCC leadership, Mark B. and myself have continued to ask questions about the PEAK initiatives and implementations, and we've been partnering with the other consultative committee leaders. We met recently with a representative from OHR to hear more about implementation plans and to continue to strive to understand the role of shared governance in the PEAK implementation and the assessment of its impact. Those are my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Flaherty Manchester. Moving on to item 8. Item 8 concerns a bylaws amendment to revise a charge for the Campus Committee on Student Behavior. 125 votes are needed to approve the changes at this meeting. If that threshold is not met, but a majority of those present and voting approve the amendments, they will be presented again at the meeting on December 1st. No motion or second is needed. Professor Alon McCormick, who's chair of the Senate Committee on Committees, is available to answer any questions. Is there any discussion regarding this item? Seeing none, Chris, could you please initiate the poll?
We'll give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 125 ayes, 7 nays, and 26 abstentions, that motion does prevail.
Thank you, Chris. Moving forward to item 9. Item 9 concerns a proposed new administrative policy, occupational health and safety. The policy is presented for discussion and an advisory vote. Before we get to the discussion and a vote, I would like to call on Adam Krychek, Director of Environmental Health and Safety, to introduce the new policy. Adam? Is Adam with us?
My apologies, 1 second, I'll get him.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. I couldn't unmute myself. So yeah, I appreciate it. My name is Adam Krychek, and I'm here today to talk to you about, like you said, a proposed administrative policy, a new policy. I'd just like to give a brief presentation and then open it up for questions. Can I share my screen? Am I able to do that?
You should be able to, yes.
Okay, appreciate it. Give me just a second here. Okay, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so there we go. All right. So just briefly wanted to talk about what our organization does, who we are, what we get involved with. So UHS, really what our mission is to support research and the operational activity, the support system to ensure safety and compliance system-wide. So anything health and safety related, we're typically getting involved. So we do things like facilitate training. We have several written programs. So for example, our chemical hygiene plan, which is essentially our lab safety manual. We have fall protection, forklift training, you name it. We probably have a program around it. We have resources, fact sheets, SOPs, things along those lines. And then we also provide several services such as hazardous waste pickup. So from the laboratories that generate hazardous waste. We pick up that waste and manage it. We facilitate regulatory permits and licenses. We have a Title V air permit, for example, that we facilitate. And we perform inspections and also facilitate regulatory inspections from outside agencies. So that's just a broad overview of what our services are. Here's our org chart. As you can see, Catherine Bonison is our AVP. I believe she's joined us on the call today, but just go looking at the blue sections here. I'm the Director of Environmental Health and Safety. You can see the programs that I oversee, but we also have biosafety, we have emergency management, we have our HERO office, radiation safety, and building code. So again, a very broad range of health and safety topics. So where the idea of this policy started was back in 2020, we were audited by internal audit, and our program was audited, and they had some findings related to OSHA compliance. So OSHA, what their findings were is OSHA compliance authority is not centralized at the university. Therefore, OSHA compliance levels are not known. So what this was referring to is that really with OSHA and safety regulations, really the foundation of those regulations involves the supervisor and the employee following the appropriate rules, but there was no policy or central authority on OSHA regulated programs. And so that was one of the findings. Another was UHS functions as a source on OSHA, a resource. So we have a lot of fact sheets and compliance documents, but we're not an authoritative body. So we cannot come in and force someone within the university to comply with the rule. That whole authority was somewhat unclear. And they charged us, they were, asked that we consider if OSHA compliance authority should reside centrally or remain decentralized. So when we looked at these findings, one of the first things that I noticed is that we don't have a policy around a lot of these OSHA rules. And so it seemed like maybe that's the route we should go. And so here is the university's policies around health and safety. So you can see we have a board of regents, a very broad health and safety policy, and then we have some administrative policies, the research related, and then operations related. And so just to give you a couple examples for our environmental protection policy, we have a policy that states who's the ultimate authority, who gets to make those decisions around environmental protection topics such as air permitting, stormwater, pollution, things along those lines. We have procedures, we have written programs involving all of these topics around environmental protection. We have something similar around controlled substances. So we have policies and procedures around controlled substances and research. And so one of the things that we noticed is all of these policies that we have, none of them really cover our broad OSHA topics. And so here are just an example. I'm not going to go over all these, obviously, but here are all of our OSHA written programs that we facilitate. And I just wanted to highlight two of these. Our chemical hygiene plan is our lab safety manual, basically, and it's for all researchers that work in a lab. It's essentially what their procedures and policies, minimum requirements are. Covers literally thousands of our lab staff. And then for the operations side, we have our hazard communication plan. Again, talks about the importance of safety data sheets, personal protective equipment, what the training requirements are. And again, thousands of employees that are covered under this, but none of these programs are covered under any university administrative policy that details things like authority and oversight. So we thought this was a policy gap. We felt one good way to address some of the audit findings was to create a policy. And so that's what we have. And that's what hopefully you've had a chance to look at. We have a draft policy out there. And so the objectives of the policy are really to formalize what's already in existence. So things such as roles and responsibilities of supervisors, of PIs, staff, and then formalize existing processes such as safety committees, departmental safety liaisons, we call them departmental safety officers, training programs and requirements, standard operating procedures, things like that. I just want to emphasize that this doesn't introduce any new restrictions or requirements on research or operations. It really just formalizes the practices that we already have in place in administrative policy. And so as far as the OSHA authority would go, it establishes Myron Franz, the Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations, as the policy senior leader, and Catherine Bonison, the AVP of University Health and Safety as the policy responsible officer. And so we're going through the review process, and that's why I'm here today. And here are the groups that have formally reviewed this policy so far. As you can see, it's a pretty broad range. And that is my presentation. So now I'll open it up for any questions, concerns.
Is there any discussion? Jerry Cohen, please go ahead.
Oops, I gotta hit the right buttons. Okay. So Adam, I think that this is good, but one thing I'd like to add and get your feedback on, you know, at the national level, I deal with a number of people who are involved in lab safety, and I'm very interested in maintaining a safe lab. And one of the problems with this document is that it's very focused on the rules and regulations, mostly from my previous employer, the federal government. And that the real, to get these ideas across to people isn't to tell them all the laws that govern them, but it's to point out that if you kill yourself in my lab, it's your parents and all your friends and your advisor who's going to be very upset and sad and unhappy, and that your real obligation is to those around you and to family and friends and all the people that care about you. And a lot of people will be very casual about whether they obey laws and rules and governance, except for, of course, those of us who run a lab who you're going to give a hard time to because our people didn't do it. But a lot of people are much more concerned about the personal side of lab safety. And so not in this document, and I know maybe it doesn't belong in that document, but I just wanted to be a spokesperson for somebody who thinks that lab safety is really a personal issue, that people who are unsafe in the lab hurt those around them, and they hurt their family, and they hurt these other people. And to get your group to remember that when you're trying to teach lab safety to the broader university community, that it's those kind of things. And, you know, there's a young woman killed at UCLA in the lab. There's been people at Alice Young's place at Texas Tech. There was an explosion in the lab that damaged the hand of one of the graduate students. There's a whole bunch of examples of people being injured. And these are kind of personal stories that are much more important than what OSHA regulation you violated when you did it. I just wanted to throw that out to you because I think it's the kind of thing that we really need to make sure across the university that these personal stories mean so much more in order for us to have a safe lab. I think I've used my time up. So
Appreciate that feedback. I totally agree with you. We bring up a lot of those stories that you just mentioned when we're giving training and having consultations. But yeah, I think really it comes down to just the policy. You know, it's going to be focused on administrative requirements and things along those lines. But I appreciate those comments.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, again, this is being brought to you for a simple advisory vote. A simple majority is required to approve. Chris, could you please initiate the poll?
We'll give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 142 ayes, 2 nays, and 10 abstentions, that motion does prevail.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Adam, very much.
Thank you.
Moving forward to item 10. Item 10 concerns old business. There is no old business for the University Senate. Item 11 concerns new business for the University Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? Seeing none, I call for a motion for adjournment of the University Senate. If someone could please signal the motion by raising a hand. Thank you very much. Do I need to call for a poll for this, Chris?
There it is.
Thank you.
About 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 150 ayes and 4 nays, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. With that, we have completed our University Senate business. We will take a short break and the Faculty Senate will convene at 3:35 p.m. in this same Zoom meeting room. So we'll see those who are staying for the Faculty Senate meeting in about half an hour. Thank you very much. It's now 3:35, and I would like to call to order the meeting of the Faculty Senate. This is a meeting of the Faculty Senate. While non-faculty senators are welcome to attend this meeting, only faculty senators may introduce business and vote on matters considered at this meeting. The floor is reserved for faculty senators. Others may have the floor only if they are yielded time by a faculty senator and recognized by the chair. Again, I'm Kristen Hickman, Vice Chair of the Faculty Senate, presiding over this meeting in the absence of President Gable. Moving on to item 2. Item 2 is a motion to approve a special rule limiting each speaker to 2 minutes of time each time they are recognized. A 2/3 majority of those present and voting is required to approve the special rule. No motion or second is needed. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Chris, can you proceed with the poll?
Give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 88 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 abstention, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. Item 3 on our agenda concerns administrative responses to Faculty Senate actions and is presented for information. There are none pending at this time. Item 4 is approval of the minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on September 29th of this year. No motion or second is needed. Chris, could you please initiate this poll?
Give another 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 86 ayes, 1 nay, and 8 abstentions, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. Item 5 on our agenda is the report of the Faculty Consultative Committee. I call on Professor Colleen Flaherty Manchester to give this report, please.
Thank you. So as chair of the FCC, I wanted to give you an update on recent activities by our committee, as well as a short progress update on the faculty reinvestment priority that I highlighted at the Faculty Senate meeting last time. So first, I just wanted to update you on the FCC providing detailed feedback to the Office of Human Resources on a planned redesign of the wellness program in advance of an RFP for a new vendor. So just in terms of background, the wellness program is a program by which employees can earn a subsidy towards their health insurance contributions by logging activities or engaging in and logging activities that are thought to promote health and wellness. So recently, the wellness program that we have been using shifted in terms of having a new vendor due to consolidation in the marketplace. And starting actually last year in December, we were engaged with OHR about faculty dissatisfaction with the platform. In particular, it was perceived by many that the logging activities and engagement with the platform was actually contributing to burnout as opposed to promoting wellness. In addition, the FCC kind of highlighted the question of the overall effectiveness of the program, kind of given recent research on these programs, as well as, again, the perceptions we are hearing from faculty on the impact. So we are not alone in this type of feedback. The P&A and Civil Service Consultative Committees also shared similar concern. And so OHR kind of worked on a redesign and then came back to these committees, including the FCC, in advance of the RFP. And so I just wanted to report that we continue to emphasize the importance of the the platform in terms of the limited burden it placed on individuals, importance of retaining the healthcare subsidy because of its disproportionate impact on lower income employees in terms of just the magnitude of that possible subsidy, and also just emphasizing the importance of program effectiveness and how to measure that given the constrained environment we have for compensation. So as OHR moves through this process, the FCC is committed to continuing to provide feedback and ask for kind of evidence of the effectiveness of the wellness program in achieving its goals in order to kind of justify continued investment in that program. So our second activities that we've been engaged with also pertain to OHR. We heard from about 24 or more faculty member about the communications from OHR around the Teamsters negotiations. In particular, the faculty that we heard from raised concern about the messaging that was sent from OHR pertaining to the negotiations, and concerns that their message was one-sided and had kind of, there's asymmetry in the access in terms of information channels, and also raising questions around the values that we want to have when we communicate. So we heard, the FCC heard these concerns. We had a special meeting and we discussed whether the FCC should take action. So after an engaged discussion, we decided the FCC voted to take action by having a time spaced on the December Faculty Senate agenda, time and space to talk about this concern, and really communicate or ask questions about the concern, and then really think about kind of the forward looking on what policies govern internal communications, and better understand the process for these internal communications in order to avoid this type of situation in the future. But just want to let you know that this is coming for the December Faculty Senate docket agenda item. And so if you have any comments that you want to share with me about setting up that agenda item, I would welcome those. So the last thing I want to share with you is actually about the other priorities that we set out around faculty reinvestment. So just a short update on that. We've been engaging actively with the provost office on trying to recognize kind of ongoing service contributions by faculty and faculty-like P&As at the unit level. So internal service, that was really, the importance was highlighted during the COVID pandemic and the racial injustice pandemics in terms of the importance of that type of work, although oftentimes it gets unnoticed or unrecognized. So more to come on that. And we are continuing as a FCC to actively consider how to kind of bring greater attention to the importance of human capital investment in the faculty and staff of the university. So as I mentioned last time, on the Faculty Senate agendas, there's going to be time for me as FCC chair to receive questions from the floor. So I just want to remind you that this is an important listening opportunity for me as well as the rest of the FCC. And please know that if you have a question, I'll try to answer it during the time today. But if I cannot answer that, I will be clear about following up with you after the meeting. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Item 6 is the opportunity to ask questions of the FCC chair. So I see first a hand from Alicia Cohen. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Alicia Cohen, Senator from the College of Liberal Arts. I'm asking this question that's come up in our Council of Chairs in the College of Liberal Arts, as well as in various faculty meetings. And I'm curious what the FCC leadership is doing with respect to having conversations around the effect of inflation on P&A and faculty salaries. This is coming up. We're seeing other contract negotiations coming up. And although thinking about reinvestments and commitments to faculty broadly is very appreciated, particularly with respect to our term faculty, the issue of the lack of a wage that's exceeding inflation for several years in a row, salary increment issues is coming up. And so if you have an update or have had conversations, that would be helpful to hear.
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is compensation is a topic that pretty much comes up at all of our meetings recently. So we've been hearing this as a primary concern of faculty. We are kind of actively working on how to kind of have some influence there. I mean, this is something that we do not have control over as a body, but we are committed to sharing the concerns, advocating for the concerns, and try to understand where we can best have impact. We have discussions ongoing about how to collaborate with the Senate Committee on Finance and Planning and their budgeting process, as well as just trying to understand how faculty voice could be heard kind of early and ongoing in these budgetary decisions.
Do we have other questions from the floor? Bo Huff, please go ahead.
Bo Hu, faculty member in the Bioproducts Biosystem Engineering CFANS. So I had a couple recent situations. I talked to our insurance company, Medica, and it seemed some of the procedures were covered a couple years ago, exactly same procedure, but right now they're not covering them, and we have to pay out of our own pockets. So I talked to my insurance a couple of times. They asked why the same procedure was covered previously, but not currently. And they told me that, oh, you know, this is probably because the university changed your coverage, and we are periodically updating with a new term, and now your procedure is not covered. So I don't know whether this is my personal experience or this is a universal phenomena. It seems that more and more items are not covered and eventually end at the cost to us. So I don't know whether this is something that is worthwhile for the FCC to look into this. Thank you.
Thank you for that question and comment. So this is something I want to kind of follow up with the Benefit Advisory Committee to see if they're seeing more of the systematic trend like you're pointing to, or kind of what would help explain kind of the changes in coverage. So I can't, I don't obviously don't want to get into the details of the procedures that you're mentioning, but I think that's really important. So if you could, I would really appreciate if you could follow up over email, and then we can better assess, reach out to the Benefit Advisory Committee to see if they're having hearing multiple concerns of this type. Thank you.
Okay, we have reached our time for questions. I see a hand. Excuse me. Can I have a motion for extending the time for questions for 3 minutes? Seeing a motion, I believe that in order to extend the time for debate, we need a 2/3 vote. So can I ask Chris to initiate a poll to extend the time for discussion?
Yeah, that's going to just take me a second.
Sure. Patience. Actually, given the time it's taking, let's extend it by 5 minutes if that's okay.
Yes. Okay, did you want to go to Jonathan?
Well, do we need to do a poll? I think
I
we need
can.
to
I
do
have it
a vote.
ready. I have it ready.
Okay, there we go. So let's vote to
Expedited.
extend our time, please.
All right, you have about 10 more seconds. Last call. So there being 90 ayes and 3 nays, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Okay. I'm so sorry, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the increase in wages relating to inflation. It's come up a bunch in our department about graduate student stipends as well. And I wanted just to point out to the FCC, if they're talking to the higher ups, that Mayo Clinic was reported in the beginning of October, had a sort of, I think, system-wide or some very large number of Mayo Clinic employees got a 6 to 9% increase, and that it could that kind of increase at Mayo could draw away from our already challenged staffing issues at the university. And so that data point seems relevant to me. Locally, I also know that across the country, some of the more elite institutions are making very large increases in graduate student stipends, and that is going to continue to make it increasingly difficult for us to recruit graduate students. Obviously, competing with the Harvards and Dukes is already hard enough, but they've gone big time into investing in graduate student stipends. So I appreciate everyone's time. Sorry, it was required a vote for me to speak. It's the first time that's ever happened.
Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that. I'll make sure to continue. We'll make sure to pass on those data points that you were just referencing.
Okay, moving forward to item 7. Item 7 is a discussion and vote on a resolution on academic freedom and term appointments. As a reminder, we are using the alternating pro and con system. So when you raise your hand to participate in the discussion, please send a chat to Chris to indicate whether your comment is pro, con, or neutral, such as a question. In addition, as part of the new consultation tracking system, as chair of the meeting, I have been asked to speak to the consultation plan and what consultation has taken place. For this resolution, the only recommended consultation was with the Faculty Consultative Committee, and that consultation took place on September 15th. I now would like to call on Professor Eric Van Wyk, Chair of the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, for a brief introduction of the resolution. Professor Van Wyk?
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Hi, hello, everyone. So I think the point of this is to briefly recap on the contents of the resolution and a clarification to it that has been made based on the meeting that we had, the last Senate meeting. So essentially, again, right, the resolution points out the importance of academic freedom, as we all certainly or presumably agree upon, and the use of tenure is the primary mechanism for protecting it. It notes that for this to be effective, right, a large majority of faculty appointments should be of this form of tenure or tenure track appointments, but that currently, or I guess in 2020, 40% of the faculty were either term faculty, so this non-tenurable category that's discussed in the tenure code, or in the academic professional and administrative personnel or P&A category, which is not discussed in the tenure code. The tenure code does state that the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee should be informed about these sort of numbers, specifically the use of long-term faculty appointments. These are the ones that go on longer than 6 years, 6 years or longer. And that this is currently this information hasn't been reported to AF&T for a number of years. And the resolution does acknowledge that there are reasonable arguments to be made for rethinking a bit about the use of term or P&A kind of appointments, given the sort of the landscape that we are in these days. So to address sort of those concerns, right, the resolution has two components. Both, I think, which fit pretty squarely in AF&T's remit. The first is to get support. The first goal here is to set up a task force to identify and really understand the appropriate use of these kinds of non-tenurable appointments, and then discuss or articulate some mechanisms for protecting the academic freedom of people in those appointments. And so the aim here in the resolution is to get some make sure faculty senate are aware of this and get their endorsement, and sort of getting faculty senate to take some ownership of this particular task force and process, since this is an important issue that fits into kind of the broader picture. I mean, there's a lot of people and groups discussing issues around term and contingent faculty on campus. And so this is, to some extent, AF&T's contribution or effort in those discussions. So that's the first part. The second part is quite simple, just a call to end this violation of the tenure code with regards to reporting of long-term use of faculty appointments in these categories. And that's where the clarification has come in. So based on the discussion at the last Faculty Senate, I think it was Beth Hartman had some questions about what exactly this phrase long-term use of a faculty appointment, what that meant. And so the very end of the second resolution in the document is extended with a sort of a parenthetical note that reads, the term long-term uses of faculty appointment is to be read as the continued use of a position, whether or not it is filled by the same individual, right? So this question of having a position in play for several years, but different people cycle through it, does that count as a long-term use? And the answer to that is yes, that was always the intention. That's how it was understood by the committee this year and in past years. So we've added that clarifying remark just to make that clear. Otherwise, yeah, it was approved by AF&T unanimously, went to FCC, was endorsed unanimously there. So I think with that, we could ask if there are FCC members who would like to mention anything from our discussions there. Otherwise, we can open it up to discussions and questions.
Before I call on anyone from FCC who might like to speak, if there is anyone, again, if you'd like to be heard as part of the discussion here, please raise your hand and include in a chat to Chris whether your comment is pro, con, or neutral. Let me call on Colleen Flaherty Manchester, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Eric, for the presentation of the resolution. I just want to make a comment as FCC chair about the consultation plan and consultation that took place. So it happened in FCC, and that was a recommendation. And I just want to kind of clarify that this was still extensively consulted within the committee. But the more important thing is that the parts of the resolution, the first part about creating a task force, this is kind of within the purview of AF&T. And so that's not something that needs widespread consultation. And the second part was about more this, it was about this reporting aspect and a lapse in reporting. And that also doesn't require kind of consultation and input for necessarily. So just wanted to report on the consultation plan as being adequate for this resolution.
Thank you, Colleen. Also from the FCC, let me call Mark B.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add to what Colleen said, and that there was really strong support for this resolution on the FCC, and we really view it as an important sort of effort by the AF&T committee to sort of provide an important piece of sort of all of the efforts that are ongoing to sort of try to improve conditions and such for term faculty and contract faculty and P&A-like faculty. And so just wanted to throw that out, that we think this is an important part of that.
Thank you, Mark. Let me call next on Alicia Cohen, please.
Alicia Cohen from the College of Liberal Arts. I'm speaking in favor of the support of the resolution. I think we need a task force for a number of reasons. My own unit has more than 40% term faculty in it in the School of Journalism, and across in general, I'm very supportive of the idea that term and professional instructors are necessary and part of our academic environment. I also think there needs to be a task force that looks at the issue of academic freedom, because for accreditation purposes, for example, I could see a need for coordinating curriculum and specific even textbooks, possibly for specific learning outcomes. But at the same time, I've been very concerned during the pandemic that we were not allowed to extend multi-year contracts to our term faculty, that we have a number of people that haven't been able to advance career-wise. And I see this as an issue for our term and P&A committee as well that I'm on. But I think this is moving in the right direction, and the task force and the issues noted are ones that we should be tracking and working on together as a faculty. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Is there other discussion? Carolyn Bischoff, please.
Hi, thank you. My name is Carolyn Bischoff. I am a senator from the University Libraries. I am speaking neutrally, more of a question to clarify for some of my colleagues. I currently hold a P&A appointment despite being on the faculty senate, but it is a P&A position with continuous appointment. And myself and my colleagues are wondering if and how this resolution impacts us. Sorry, my 3-year-old is playing next to me. Or if it just impacts term faculty and then appointments that are term faculty, but in a P&A classification with teaching functions.
Yeah, hi, Carolyn. Thank you. Good question, right? So it is directed primarily at sort of, faculty-like positions, as we say. I think the sort of the extent to which it would affect others in P&A categories, I think is a little more limited. But I think this would be something we'd want to sort of raise with in the construction of the task force. But yeah, Gopalan has his hand up, and he was here when helped write or wrote really the resolution. So I suspect he has something to chime in on here.
Gopalan, please go ahead.
I think you're
We can't hear you. It doesn't look like a Zoom problem. Perhaps we can come back to Gopalan.
he is just down the hall from me. He could run down to my office in the worst case. So
there you go. I think that's what he's exactly what he's gonna do.
it looks like it, doesn't it? Okay.
Okay. So I'm not sure who I need to call on next, Chris, in order to maintain our pro-con neutral approach. We have 2 people in the queue that I see.
Christina should be next.
Christina Crone, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I'm in a location. I cannot undo my video. Sorry about that. My question is, I'm pretty much on the neutral part. My question is, how does this pertain to clinical faculty? So my understanding is that a lot of the faculty in the medical school are on tracks that are non-tenure tracks, but do go through promotion. Is this one that also those faculty would fit, or how do they fit?
Yeah, so I think they fit in the category of people that are roles and appointments that this task force would be paying attention to. The clinical faculty are a little different in spirit than, say, in CLA or CSE, but are still sort of part of this broader discussion of the importance of academic freedom and tenure or lack of tenure as a way to protect that. So those appointments are things that will be part of the discussion of the task force.
So if I might just add something to that, it's that if you look at the percentages, almost everybody in the medical school is in a term appointment that is covered specifically by the tenure code. And about 50% of the others are in this, so to speak, nebulous category called P&A faculty-like appointments. And so in that sense, they will be covered, the discussion will cover medical school, but the the kind of phenomenon in the medical school might be different from that in the rest of the university. And part of the task force is, at least the way we envisaged it last year, was that its objective is to try and understand the dynamics and try and understand why you might want to have term appointments, and then find a way to accommodate it in the context of whatever the tenure code says. I also had another point, which was about that the question from the person from the library, Carolyn Bishop. And it said this was a question or point that was raised by one of the AF&T committee members last year, right, when we were discussing the resolution. This is Dania Liebau, right? So we are aware of it, and it's something that we will take into account in the course of, hopefully, Eric and the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee will take into account in the course of determining how exactly to charge the task force once in the course of setting it up. Yeah.
Jerry Cohen, go ahead, please.
Okay, as soon as they give me permission. All right. This is kind of a neutral comment. So when I was on AF&T, it seemed to me that there was a regents policy that only 25% of our faculty could be in non-tenure track positions. And so missing from this resolution, although I think it's really important that we review long-term issues with these. The other thing which is important for AF&T to review are colleges like we heard from a couple of people already that are at 40% non-tenure track, which would exceed the regents policy. And so I just throw that out to my colleagues who are now on AF&T as to that review as well, and whether that is already being taken care of, and so it doesn't need to be in this resolution, or if it's something we should take up in the future. Thank you.
It's an important point. It's there in the resolution in the sense that the task force is aimed at identifying sort of legitimate uses of these contingent appointments. It does the resolution doesn't call out that requirement specifically from the tenure code, but it does sort of mention this need to, the fact that these numbers have grown and that we need to sort of understand how best to sort of accommodate that. And I think going back to getting to 25% is probably a difficult task, but the task force is certainly looking at that as a concern. Even if the resolution doesn't call that particular item out directly, though.
And if I might add something, it's that the tenure code in some senses might be stricter in that it doesn't talk about percentages, but it talks about the manner in which these term appointments can be used, right? And so one might want to sort of relax that a little bit, maybe because of the reality of the situation, so that we are in accord with the tenure code. And I also think that, so first of all, the tenure code doesn't sort of talk about 25% at all, okay? And secondly, maybe putting the focus on 25% and taking it away from the substance may not be the right thing. And that's the kind of thing that hopefully the task force will look at.
Okay, we are close to out of time for discussion. Ned Patterson, can you make your point quickly, please?
Sure. Thank you. Ned Patterson from the FCC and Vet Med. I believe there is a policy in the tenure policy of the regents about the 25%, but there are other clauses in it. You can get exceptions on a year-to-year basis. I think many of the health sciences schools have in the past, but that again has not been very transparent or clearly communicated. And I think I'm in favor of this resolution to make sure that's transparent and communicated and finding out the best uses within all the different units. Thank you.
Turning then to a vote, a simple majority is required to approve. Chris, could you please initiate the poll?
We'll give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 87 ayes, 2 nays, and 5 abstentions, that motion does prevail.
Thank you, Chris. Moving forward to item 8 on our agenda. Item 8 is approval of revisions to 2 educational policies. I'd like to call, or Tom Chase, who is the chair of the Senate Committee on Educational Policy, is available to answer any questions. Is there any discussion of these revisions to 2 educational policies? Seeing none, moving forward to the vote, no motion or second is needed. Chris, can I call on you to initiate the poll, please?
Give about 10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 82 ayes, 0 nays, and 13 abstentions, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. Item 9 concerns a bylaws amendment to revise the charge for the Faculty Consultative Committee. 77 votes are needed to approve the changes at this meeting. If that threshold is not met, but a majority of all present and voting approve the amendments, they will be presented again at the meeting on December 1st. No motion or second is needed. Is there any discussion of this item? Seeing none, Chris, can you please initiate the poll for this item?
Give another 10 seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 78 ayes, 1 nay, and 13 abstentions, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. Item 10 concerns a statement from the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee and is presented for information. Item 11 concerns old business. There is no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 12 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those present and voting. New business. Seeing none, I would like to entertain a motion for adjournment. If someone could please signal their motion by raising their hand. I want to thank everyone who has raised their hand to move for adjournment. Chris, can you please initiate that poll?
Final 10 seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. There being 98 ayes, no nays, and no abstentions, that motion prevails.
Thank you, Chris. And with that, I believe we are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.